Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a menace to society.
Then so shall you be. Hey y'all, this is Lisa Landry. Welcome back to Menace to Society. I am very excited about this week's guest. This gentleman came to my attention because I noticed that he goes to every single Oklahoma City Council meeting and tweets out what's happening so we can all stay involved. Welcome to the podcast, Marty Peercy.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. You are an independent journalist. You're involved with the city council meetings, and you also do a lot of nonprofit work here in Oklahoma.
That's correct. As an independent journalist, I cover local politics in Oklahoma County, specifically at the city level, but some on the county level. Every week I go to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Sometimes it's really boring, but it's important to cover. But I go to many other local open meetings, and I live tweet them on a platform on Twitter. My platform is called OKC-SPAN, which on Twitter is OKC_SPAN. I don't have to take credit for being clever. Somebody else suggested that name for it. But I really like that. OKC-SPAN.
So what piqued your interest into getting involved and going to all these open meetings? Is it your journalism or just civic duty or what?
A little of both. Some of it was just kind of coincidence. I lost a job at the end of April of this past year. And when I lost that job, I was pretty optimistic about something, really tailor-made for me to come along. I was very interested in criminal legal reform. And so to bide the time while I was waiting for this position to come about, our county commissioner was working on forming a trust to operate our county jail. Gosh, if anybody in Oklahoma has probably heard some nightmare stories about Oklahoma County Jail. The Department of Justice won't leave prisoners there. If they have a federal prisoner, they'll put them in a different county because it's run down. It wasn't built by a company that typically builds jails. They really didn't know what they were getting into. So a lot of blame gets put on the sheriff, which isn't entirely unfair, but it's not just one person's fault. It was built badly. So the county commission wanted to form a trust to operate that jail. So I started going to those meetings when they were talking about that and planning that. And I'm just an extremely online guy. And so I was tweeting those meetings while I was at them and realized I just kind of had a flair for reporting what was happening, but also injecting sort of my own perspective and some humor. I think I'm funny.
I think you're funny too. Your tweets they're pleasantly snarky, if that makes sense. You're not ugly to anybody, but they're fun.
Yeah, that's what I like to think. I've got it in me to be ugly towards some of them, but I don't do it very often. I've got standard nicknames for certain public figures. Like there's a real estate attorney in Oklahoma City who represents developers, and he's constantly in city council or in the planning commission. I refer to him as mercenary real estate attorney David Box every time I refer to him. And I know him pretty well, and he thinks that's funny, so I don't have to worry about that hurting his feelings. Or a former city manager is on the jail trust. I refer to him as concerned taxpayer Jim Couch. I've got nicknames for as many people as I can.
Well, if they like them and nobody's feelings are getting hurt and they like being talked about, that's not a bad thing.
Well, I figure you don't get to be in the public eye. You don't get to be in public service without people talking about you. It's not a reasonable expectation of privacy if you're going to sit on a county commissioner board or the city council or whatever. But added to which, I should say in full disclosure, I am married to a current city councilor on Oklahoma City's city council, and my wife, Jo Beth Hammond. She represents Ward 6 on the Oklahoma City Council.
And what's your nickname for her?
You know what I say? Because she represents me, right? We live in the same place. She's my city councilor, and I frequently will say, my, and open brackets, extremely Borat voice, city councilor. Yeah, she's a good sport, and I really do try to respect the fact that some people are relying on me to know what's happening at city council, and it is not standard journalism for me to cover a voting body, a decision-making body, of which one part is my spouse. I try to be pretty transparent about that. I'm freelance, write articles for a local online news publication called Oklahoma City Free Press. And any time that I'm talking about the city council in an article, if she comes up, there's a disclaimer that says that we're married. If there's a story that she's in the center of, I don't write that story. Somebody else does, because I don't want to sacrifice any of the integrity of the publication. I can say I'm being impartial, but that's my wife, so, how impartial really can I be? I did approach her about something recently. Like, she came home, and I was like, all right, I just want to talk to you as your constituent for a minute. I was mad at the cops about something, and I was like, this really frustrates me. She said, I can understand why that's frustrating. Had a brief professional conversation before. So anyway, how's your day?
Yeah, right. Right. Please don't make me sleep on the couch.
That's right.
Well, that's cool, though, that you do have that integrity where you're telling readers, hey, this is the situation, and yet this is what's up.
Right. The whole idea is transparency, right? Our city council meetings are on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday at 8:30. Well, most people work, same with our Board of County Commissioners. That's every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. I'm in a position where I can go to those meetings and I can tell people what's going on. Plus, I'm accustomed now to the processes, so I'm able to kind of shed some light on what's behind the decision that's being made. I get to know the relationships that some of these parties have with each other, so that I can point out that there's a history here between this commissioner and the sheriff, or this commissioner and this other commissioner, or whatever. And people seem to really value it. I mean, in the course of, I think I started OKC Span in June of 2019. In those 6.5 months since, I've gotten about 1,600 followers, and that's some inside baseball stuff. I mean, it is OKC stuff. I'm not talking about Kansas City or Chicago or any of my other homes away from home. I'm talking about OKC local politics. So 1,600 people, that's more than vote in most city elections in Oklahoma City at this point.
Sad but true.
It is. Seriously, I mean, somebody said something about me being a propagandist, and I don't take offense at that. I mean, I'm definitely coming into this with a perspective, but I think most of the followers I have on OKC Span recognize that my perspective, and I compare it to, I used to read Roger Ebert's movie reviews. I knew what he liked and that I didn't, and I knew what I liked that he didn't, and so if he wrote a review, I could look at it through that lens of, well, you didn't like that, but I'd probably like it for the same reasons you didn't, right? And so, I have some police officers, libertarians, what have you, who follow me on here, and they know what to expect. They know what my perspective is going to be when I speak up. So I think that's fair.
Totally fair. I'm one of your followers, and I don't live in OKC, but it is the largest city council, the largest city here in the state of Oklahoma. So I really value what you're doing. And a lot of people don't get involved in politics at the local level, but that's the level that affects us on the most personal basis.
Absolutely. It's where you have the most say. I mean, like I said that sort of, kind of jokingly about having more followers than we usually have in a city election, but that's not far from the truth. We have an election in February. I'll be curious to see how many people show up for it. We have just a couple of items on the ballot. One of them is for liquor sales on Sunday, the same as Tulsa passed recently. I think that'll bring some people out. We have a specific eighth of a cent sales tax to support parks, for funding for parks. And usually that'll get people out to vote no when there's a tax suggested. But I'll be curious to see how many people actually show up for that vote. But those are real things that really impact our community. That mayoral race city council races, those happen. Those elections are in February. I don't think that's by accident that the 13th of February we'll be voting on city council. Well, the weather's lousy and people aren't paying attention. So it's just the wealthy landowners, property owners who are showing up to vote, about 4,000 or 5,000 of them, if that. And so we're letting our power be consumed by people who already have accrued a lot of power. And that's why I want to be on the front line saying, this is what's actually happening over here. Everybody, pay attention. And if you don't have the time to pay attention, I'm going to pay attention for you. Please check in.
Yeah, that's quite something that you're doing so that people do have some appreciation for what's going on and they can get involved if they want to. They can vote if they choose to. They can make a call to somebody's office and say, hey, I like what you're doing, or please don't do that.
Right, absolutely. And, city councilor might get 10 calls in a week. A senator, even a state senator, is going to get 50, 60, and a senator like James Lankford is going to get hundreds, So, you can bring your weight to bear locally in a way that you just can't nationally. I'm not saying that it's not important. I vote in every single election, right? It's important to me to vote. But David Mamet said that voting for president is a lot like dancing with a prostitute. Yeah, sure, you're dancing with a girl. What does it mean? I'm not sure, but, you get to dance. So when you vote in your city or your county, one vote literally can make a difference, and so I like to vote nationally, but I sure make sure I'm there to vote at every local election, because Joe Beth and I showing up and voting, that may sway the election, and certainly having the ear of some of those people in the city and in the county assessor or the county clerk or the court clerk, knowing who those people are and being able to look them in the eye and say, if you're going to do something dishonest, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do it, but knowing that I'm watching you. You know what I'm saying? And if you're going to lie to me, you're going to lie to my face, right? And I don't expect most of those folks to do that, but just as an example, I guess.
Yeah. And you've lived all over America, and now you're back here in Oklahoma. What are some cool things that you've seen change since you left and then returned to your home state?
I will say specifically Oklahoma City is just vibrant now. When I was a lad coming up here, there was not much. When I was a kid, we'd go to the mall. That was in Oklahoma City. We have to come up here. Well, now, I live downtown in Oklahoma City. I've started my car once in the last 2 months. I ride my bike, I walk, and I take the bus. That's how I get around. And anything I want to do apart from camping, I can do like within a 30-minute bike ride of where I am. And we have an incredible art scene across the state of Oklahoma. We have honestly one of the best coffee scenes in the country. And I've lived in Portland, Oregon. I've lived in Chicago. I've been in coffee for most of my life, and I think Oklahoma City's coffee scene puts Chicago's in the shade. And not just Oklahoma City, Tulsa has too. We've built a community. Let me throw some armchair cultural criticism out there. I think that Oklahoma is built on this culture of abandonment, and I think that we kind of learned by being alone to do for ourselves and our local community. Like, if I want something cool, I'm going to have to make it. I'm going to have to leave here to go and find it. So what if I stay and I make it? And that's what Oklahoma City looks like to me today. And now there are 5,000 people in Oklahoma City doing really cool things, and you can know every single one of them. That's precious to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of small town vibe here, even though there are some big things happening.
Yeah. Gosh, dark spot in the news, but we've had 2 shootings at Penn Square Mall in the last couple of months. One of them was shortly before Christmas, and sure enough, there's Steven Adams from the Thunder having to evacuate from the mall. Like he's part of our community here. Joe Beth volunteers, does some social media work too for an urban farm here in Oklahoma City called Commonwealth. And Kyle Singler is a player for the Thunder, donated money for them to build a hoop house. These folks are part of our community. Russell Westbrook was out and about in Oklahoma City a lot. KD had a restaurant here, people are really part of I don't know, not to be too corny about it, but after the really big tornado a couple of years ago, the meme that was going around was just the shape of the state with the word home in the middle of it. And man, that really struck a chord with me. With a lot of people, that this is our place and nobody's going to make it better but us.
Well, it does seem like there are a lot of improvements going on. I know that the teacher strike got pay raises for those who are educating youngsters here.
Yeah. And I wish it would have been a lot bigger, but it's a start. If we can get more people on board and involved in that, the more the merrier. I think that Matt's vote that we recently had in Oklahoma City, we've been doing it for, well, this is the fourth iteration. And so for 30 years, we've been doing a penny sales tax for capital improvements in the city. Well, this newest iteration, more than half of it is for human social needs and domestic violence and substance use disorders and homelessness, investing a lot in public transportation. We need to row the boat. It's us that's going to do it. Nothing about us without us. And I think that we're largely on the right track in central Oklahoma. And I'd like to think statewide, I always like to say nothing about us without us. And I think we've got that kind of vibe going on in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it feels like it. It feels like there's a lot of reform movements happening, and it's nonpartisan. It's all inclusive in some ways. In some ways, it's not. It's old school bickering. But
Sure.
but it does seem, as somebody who is here from outside, there does seem to be a synergy happening here where folks are getting more involved in trying to build up communities.
I think so. And, on my less sanguine days, I would say that's because our governments have abandoned us. They've failed us in so many important ways. The last several years, I worked at an agency called the Homeless Alliance, and that came out of a need that was noticed and diagnosed by people in the community, and people started addressing it. And the more they addressed it, the more other people would take note, and perhaps the city or the state, the federal government, because we use HUD money to house people, the more work we do, the more that becomes apparent that there's more work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, the people that I've served in the last several years, I mean, if it's not us, if it's not frontline service providers getting out and trying to help folks navigate this pretty confusing system, then what's going to happen with them, because it's not by magic. It takes work. It takes rolling up sleeves. Luckily, we have a lot of people in Tulsa and Oklahoma City and Lawton and Weatherford, and Enid who want to roll up their sleeves. You've spoken with a lot of people in Tulsa there who are doing some pretty incredible work. Still She Rises, you mentioned before, if we were off mic at the time, but what a great organization. And that's just some people deciding we're going to do this work because people are slipping through the cracks. And I guess the closer you are to the cracks, the better you are at seeing the people before they slip through, I guess.
Well, how can somebody get involved if they're listening and they're in OKC and they kind of feel like, hey, maybe I could give 5 hours a week to a good cause? What should they do?
Yeah, as far as volunteering, frontline volunteering, it's kind of dicey. Sometimes needs are pretty diverse. I would say getting in touch with the Homeless Alliance, specifically in Oklahoma City, and seeing what they need. In Tulsa, I would get in touch with Mental Health Association Oklahoma. They do a lot of great work on the ground in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City. I don't want to make it sound like they're only in Tulsa. They're in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, but that's a good place to get involved on the volunteer tip. And I would say people who are professionals who are making a living, your money is necessary. It is what it is. We live in a capitalist society, and we can't do any of the things we need to do without money. The nonprofit that I run is just me on staff, and I don't get paid for it. But people donate money, and I buy bikes and tune up bikes and give them to people who are experiencing homelessness or transitioning out of homelessness. And that's a freedom machine, That's something that enables somebody to get to and from work when the buses are running. That enables somebody to just be able to determine their own schedule in a way that you can't when you're relying on the bus or people to give you rides. And that organization, I just want to plug that. That is called The Wheels Project, and you can find it online at thewheelsproject.org. But somebody raised $100 last week and gave it to me yesterday. That's a bike. I mean, that's a young person who's in shelter at CC Youth who's going to get a bike out of that $100. So trust the people who know what they're doing. I would say we know how to make your donation dollars go a long way. Everybody loves to have some volunteers. I could use volunteers helping me deliver bikes on occasion because I don't really drive that good. But it's hard to throw a bike over my shoulder and ride my own bike to wherever it is I'm delivering that. But those donation dollars are really important right now. After the holidays, everybody tightens their belt a little bit. The point that can really make a difference to the people that we serve that don't have anything. When those resources are dry for a couple of months, they can really feel it. So that's sort of that's my insight on volunteering and donating money, I guess, to nonprofits.
Yeah, it makes total sense. We take so much for granted. Even those amongst us who are struggling, at least we have transportation most of the time, or we have access to a car to get to places, and we forget how important that is for those of us who don't.
Yeah, steeped in the community of homelessness, right? That's sort of what takes center stage in most of my thinking about social issues. There are things that you just don't think about, that people struggling to survive on a daily basis, that grind, just how isolating it is, how easy it is to have legal trouble. I mean, if I want to have a drink or 6, I'm at home. I can do that. No cop's gonna bust into my apartment and say, "You're drunk. You're going to jail." You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But somebody who doesn't have a living room, their living room happens to be the alley or the parking lot. Like, why do you begrudge somebody having a drink? You get to do it at your house. They just don't have a structure around them. So if I have to wake up in the middle of the night and use the restroom, I have a restroom to use. I'm not taking a risk of getting charged with public indecency because I live inside. I had a guy, one of the first guys I got to work on a housing plan with, he had $800 plus in fines for trespassing tickets. And he had those tickets because he was sleeping in a parking garage. Well, that shocks the conscience. Like, I couldn't house this guy without getting these fines addressed, and the fines existed because he wasn't housed. I think we all could do a better job of just recognizing some of the nuance instead of calling the cops because somebody's outside. You know what I'm saying? People have a right to sleep, etc. Don't trip over my soapbox. I'll get my soapbox. I'll put it up on top of my high horse. I'll climb up there and give a speech if I'm not careful. So.
That's what you're here for.
As part of it. I'm a town crier.
Yeah, but it's good to have town criers. We need to be reminded often, most of us, in our day-to-day existence, that we are more fortunate than we recognize, and we can do a little bit more to make somebody else's burden easier. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We're all in it together, whether we want to be or not. I really believe that. I think that generational poverty has a deleterious effect on our entire community, and our entire society suffers because of it.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. It's like racism affects all of us, no matter what our culture or color of our skin. Gender bias affects all of us. Classism affects all of us. Homelessness, bad education, all kinds of stuff affect every single one of us. But I'm one of those hippies that thinks we're all just a big dysfunctional family anyway.
If we could just hug it out, we could hug it out. But we're going to have to hug it out and do some of that important therapeutic work too, huh?
Yeah. We got a lot of family issues.
That's true.
So I'm just wondering, because I do know that Oklahoma has a huge population of veterans. Do a lot of the people that you serve, are they veterans who have ended up homeless?
It's one of the great hypocrisies of our nation. that we are willing to send people to possibly die for our freedom, but once they get back, we're not as concerned about taking care of them as we should. I personally don't think we should be sending anybody to kill or die for anything, but here we are. We do have a lot. We have a high rate of veteran homelessness, and that's real chicken and the egg kind of stuff with why is so-and-so homeless. Well, it's never one thing, but how common it is that you'll find somebody who's experiencing homelessness who served in the armed forces is pretty shocking. Now, we have better resources for people experiencing homelessness who are veterans than we do for someone who came out of prison and never could get a job or an apartment after that. Fewer resources for that person than we do for someone who served in the military. But yeah, there's a lot of people who were veterans. There's a lot of people who were estranged from their family. I've done a lot of work with transition age youth, people under 25 who are experiencing homelessness. And gosh, the percentage of youth who are experiencing homelessness who are part of our LGBTQIA community, it's staggering because this is still a deeply conservative religious environment. And I don't understand how a parent could put a child out of their life because of their gender identity or their sexuality. I don't get it, but I know it happens because I see it a lot. So those are two really highly vulnerable populations. We have a lot of people who are experiencing serious mental illness, and we have a lot of people who use drugs or self-medicate with alcohol. I don't have any judgment about that. I just want to keep them safe while they're doing it. I'm not looking to make anybody quit doing drugs or get sober or whatever. I want to get people inside so that if they have some insight and want to quit, they have a safe place and a way to actually try to accomplish that, right?
Yeah.
Homelessness skews male, it skews white, it skews middle age. But we have a lot of different kinds of people who are experiencing homelessness in Oklahoma and Tulsa and Oklahoma City, across the country, really. And I think right now in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, what we're witnessing is a new type of homelessness, which is people who previously, 15, 20 years ago, it never would have occurred to somebody that they might become homeless, but wages have stagnated and rents keep going up. And this is why we see the epidemic of homelessness that we do in New York and on the West Coast, because our minimum wage in this country is so low that a single mom in Oklahoma City working and having an apartment that's appropriate for her and her child, she would have to work about 80 hours a week at a McDonald's or what have you at minimum wage. I mean, that's not sustainable. There's not one magic bullet, but boy, a living wage sure would do a lot of good for a lot of our folks that are experiencing homelessness.
To personalize it that way makes a difference, I think, because it's easy to say, oh, well, why didn't they make better choices? Or why didn't she marry somebody who wasn't a drunk? Or why didn't she pick a guy that didn't hit her, that wanted to take care of his kids? But, if you make a wrong choice romantically, you're not going to get help from anybody to get out of that relationship. That's just what's up. And then you have to deal with the blowback of, I fell for an abuser who is willing to beat me and not feed our children.
Right. And it's just so deeply frustrating that somebody with means can make really bad decisions, and somebody without means can not make nearly as bad a decision, but the consequences for somebody who is poor are much greater than they are for somebody who has wealth. And domestic violence does not care about your socioeconomic background. Mental illness does not care about your socioeconomic background. Neither does substance use disorder. These are problems and situations that affect everybody, every social strata. But boy, we can sure shit on somebody poor who has it, Pardon me, It's a swear word, but we can sure look down on.
Hey, this is Oklahoma. We don't cotton to that kind of language, sir.
That's right. That's right.
My neighbors tell me to have a blessed day often, and I like it. I do. I love it.
That is come for have a blessed day. No, thank you. Don't tell me what to do. That's my response.
I don't mind it, though. I know some people here who grew up in it, they find offense, like, oh, don't do that to me. I love it. I have lived in Los Angeles and New York City where my neighbors rarely told me things like, have a blessed day.
Sure. Just being able to have somebody just be pleasant for a split second.
Right.
David Foster Wallace talked about how frustrating the professional smile could be until you're in a place like Boston and you don't even get the professional smile, and you're like, I am owed this fake pleasantry. Right. How dare you?
Right? Why is everybody here so warlike?
Yeah.
Speaking of Boston, not Oklahoma.
Well, sure. No, we're a different kind of warlike. We say bless your heart, and what we mean is you're dumb. I think you're stupid. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. He's a fool.
I went walking around. I was out in the country. I was at a friend of a friend's home about 6 months ago, and I was walking by livestock because there are a lot of animals out here in people's not really yards, but kind of their yards sometimes.
Yeah. Sure.
And I was walking around and I thought I saw a water buffalo. I didn't have my glasses on. And I went back to the home. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a water buffalo. I've seen cows and horses and mules, and now I just saw a water buffalo. And the homeowner was so gracious to me. She just kind of touched my shoulders and she said, are you sure you saw a water buffalo? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she's like, well, bless your heart.
That's right. Yeah, you definitely didn't, but you know what? I don't want to disabuse you of your fantasy.
You're just cute. You're just a little too city for us, but you'll fit in after a while. But then I found out there is an actual, excuse me, I found out there's an actual cattle rancher down in Texas, not that far away from us, who has water buffalo.
Well, I would love to see it, of course. But driving through Oklahoma, you can find people who raise buffalo.
Yeah.
American bison. The scientific name for which, I don't know if you know this, but it's very important. You'll have a difficult time committing this to memory. The scientific name of bison is bison.
Ah.
That's, yeah. Not to be confused with the bison Europa. Bison. We've got the real deal.
We've got the real deal. It's so authentic, we say it twice.
Yeah, it's like the Duran of the animal kingdom.
So what's coming up for you? What projects are you working on that we should know about?
I am working on a collection of essays to be published by Literati Press, which is a local press here in Oklahoma City. And due date on that is TBD because it's a collection, so there's a bunch of old essays. But I want a couple of new essays so that people who have read all of them still will buy the book. Just to sweeten the pot a little bit, here's an essay you haven't read. But so that's hopefully, that should be this year, hopefully in the first 6 months of this year. Keep a lookout for that. When it happens, I won't shut up about it.
You'll be tweeting us. We'll find out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'll tweet it on all 5 Twitter accounts that I have or whatever. I am active on Twitter. I am extremely online. Liz, I am extremely online. I was tweeting about Mr. Peanut just this morning. I am covering local news, local politics on OKC. That is at OKC_SPAN, SPAN. But also my personal Twitter is at Marty Peercy. That's MartyPeercy. And my nonprofit is The Wheels Project, which is on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and that is The Wheels Project OK. Our website is thewheelsproject.org. Please check it out. Look at our pictures. You want to see some happy people getting bikes, being given just a tool for agency and freedom. And if you want to play a part in that, I would I welcome everybody to join us and help make the dream of mobility viable for people in Oklahoma City who've been experiencing homelessness. I get emotional about it. It is such a big deal to be able to give somebody a bike that they could waste an extra hour because they just barely missed a bus, or they could go ahead and ride 12, 15-minute bike ride. It's just a huge life changer. So those are my main things that I'm working on.
Wheels Project.
The Wheels Project, that's right.
We go find you there. Thank you so much, Marty. I think you're awesome. I'm going to keep enjoying your not too snarky, kind of Oklahoma-friendly tweets about your local politicians. And I just think you're great. Thank you so much for speaking with my listeners and me.
And Lisa, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Thanks again, Marty Peercy. You're terrific. Find Marty online. He's all over Twitter, OKC_span. And if you want to support, maybe you don't have $100 to toss at him, but you can send him a check for $5, $10, $15. It all adds up. And please join me at lisalandry.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on Twitter. I appreciate your support very much. Shout out, Ari. I love you. I would so love to ride around on a bike with you. We should go check out, I don't know, a place without ducks. Remember that time we went to the place with the ducks that attacked us in Rhode Island? Ooh, those Rhode Island ducks are mean, boo. Look out.